You're viewing the Crate Pro Diagrams video. The Diagrams file is an important tool when it comes to understanding how Crate Pro works, as well as providing some outstanding foundation information about crate manufacturing in general. One of the two greatest concerns that the owners of crating companies have expressed to me over the years is the ability to free themselves from the quoting process. The second is the ability to hire and/or train quality people to manufacture crates. Well, Crate Pro addresses the first concern in many ways throughout the program. The second is addressed directly by the Diagrams part of Crate Pro. I don't know of anywhere you can run an employment ad in the Sunday paper for an experienced crate builder and actually expect to find one, and that's what Crate Pro Diagrams helps you overcome. In addition to guiding you through some of Crate Pro's features, the Diagrams file provides you and your employees with helpful educational tools. Okay, let's go ahead and take a look. The Diagrams file includes well over 1,000 hand-drawn diagrams. All of them, except I think one of them, were hand-drawn by me personally to assure their accuracy. Many of the diagrams are accompanied by text to help explain the diagram itself, as well as how that diagram may be a part of or interact with Crate Pro as a whole. We'll spend most of the time in this video looking at crate and pallet styles, the difference in the styles, and how to locate styles faster. That being said, though, we're not going to skip a review of the basic benefits of the file. So, here we go. The left three menu options here include the style diagrams. Crate Pro Style section, where we are now, we'll see the diagrams in a moment. Astm styles and mil-spec styles. No matter if you're in the US or not, and no matter if you feel you make specification boxes and crates or not, it's very likely that every box or crate you make is based on a US government standard. Now, if you drive a Chevy, I won't tell you that your car was engineered by Ford. But in the same sense that Henry Ford designed the first automobile, the U.S. Department of Agriculture designed the first wood boxes and crate styles. And if you build anything that looks like any of these styles we're going to look at, then the U.S. government is the origin of the general design. The designs created by the U.S. Department of Agriculture were later refined and republished by various U.S. military departments, and even later were rewritten again in a different way by Astm. Currently, the Astm and MIL standards are often referenced, so in Crate Pro, you can cross-reference them here. Now, the explanation as to why Crate Pro had to have its own naming standard is covered in another video, but you'll see here how diverse Crate Pro is while it still maintains control over the design process. If you received an RFQ that references an Astm standard or a mil-spec standard, you can simply select the appropriate menu option, then locate the reference standard. From there, you can directly link to the Crate Pro style and see the details that makes that style unique. Here we'll go ahead and take a look at that. So let's assume you get an RFQ for an Astm D6251. Well, we can see here, first off, we're looking at the mil specs, and we don't see anything that looks like that. So let's take a look at Astm. And sure enough, we can see that Astm standards start with D, and they're 4 numbers. In this case, we're looking at the D6251, and let's say we get a request for a quote for a D6251J. Well, here it is, quite simply. Very simple, straightforward, and easy to find. If you receive an RFQ that references an Astm style or a mil-spec style, you can simply select the appropriate menu option, then locate the reference standard. From there, you can link directly to the Crate Pro standard and see the details that make that standard unique. As you saw in an earlier video, Crate Pro styles are divided as shown here. If you didn't view the earlier video, please pause this video now and read this information so you have a better understanding of what we'll show next. Now you can see, just as Crate Pro is divided initially by the 3 major characteristics, light duty, medium duty, or heavy duty, the tabs are divided up the same way, and then we also have pallets in Crate Pro. Let's take a look at light duty, and now you can see the second row of tabs will show and use the second and third character of the Crate Pro style name. Let's go back to the style names, and we can see the second one is P, L, or M for plywood, lumber, or mixed sheething, and the third is I, O, or N for inside framing, outside framing, or no framing cleats. So we'll go back to the light duty here, and we can see on the final row of tabs we're looking at 001. This is an L, light duty, P, plywood, O, out, LPO, 001 style box. If we look at plywood inside, we have a similar box with inside framing. Now none, this is an example where the end panel does have cleating, but there is no other cleating on the box. And then a light duty lumber with outside battens, with inside battens, and with no battens. An example of mixed, what may commonly be called a picture box or a flat box or flat crate, where we have plywood on the top, possibly on the bottom as well, but we have lumber sides and ends. Now let's take a look at how these styles are organized. With Crate Pro having about 250 different styles, it's important to know that you can find the styles that you need when you need them. Now, one thing that we're going to go over in a little bit is how to exclude the styles that you don't use. That's really not a part of the diagrams file itself, but part of setting up Crate Pro. But this is a good time to mention it since we're really getting into the styles in depth. Now if you'll notice that the last row of tabs here are grouped in sets of 20. So we have LPO 001 through LPO 020. If we hit the More tab, we'll see 021 through 040, and that goes so on and so on. Now, what these have in common, they're all LPO, so they're all going to be light duty construction methodology. They'll all have plywood sheathing, and they'll all have their framing on the outside. What 1 through 20 specifically have in common is that all of these styles include skids, and they include a plywood base. Now when you create a style in Crate Pro, you can always replace a plywood base with a lumber base. You can also remove skids. You can also add skids. Keeping in mind that the first step of the two-step process of designing a crate is allowing Crate Pro to use its automation to create the design as closely as possible to what you want. Selecting the right style will produce the right base and lower assembly right off for you. So if we go through these styles, 001, 002, we can see now that there's differences between them. Each style we've got some text, and the text will tell us what's unique about them. Some styles may have more text to them, and some may have less, depending on how much explanation really is required. So all of these LPOs vary in some way. This one, for example, has no cleating on the top. This one, for example, is a load-bearing corner configuration, where these cleats, the top cleats, meet. Go back here to being in contrast to a standard interlocking corner, which is more typical on boxes of this size and design. So let's go back and take a look at the 001. And we can see, if you're familiar with either the Mil-Spec or the Astm standards, this is a standard PPP B601 or an Astm D6251A style box. Nothing special about it. It's all very standard. Let's hit More and take a look at a 021. Before we do that, remember, 001 through 020 is with skids and a plywood base. Let's hit More and take a look. Now we're looking at 021. And the difference here, you can see very closely, now we have a lumber base. This box of 021 is exactly the same as 001, except it has a lumber base. And if you can see here, numbers 021 through 040, what they have in common is they all have skids and a lumber base. Let's hit More again. And we're looking at a 041 through 060. And now we're back, it's a little hard to see, but we're back to a cleated plywood base. And now we have locking skids or cross rub scripts, whatever you may want to call them in Crate Pro. The components are technically called rub scripts, but we'd call this maybe a pallet type base or locking skid type base. We can see here 041 through 060 is a 4-way skid with a plywood base. Let's hit More again and look at 061, and now we have a lumber base. with the interlocking or four-way skid. So you can see that we've got some consistency going throughout. It makes it easier to find things. If you want to do a standard 601A or a standard box, you decide that that's the standard that you want to follow, and you want to change from a plywood base to a lumber base. The quickest way to do it is to simply select a 021 if you're familiar with the 001. And then all of these are relevant. If we were to look at a 080, we have a specific configuration. I don't remember the details of all this. I think, again, we've got some odd cleating arrangements. And if we look at a 060, as far as the cap of the box goes, the cap will be exactly the same all the way down. 040 and 020 will be the same. That standard goes throughout all of Crate Pro, and you can use that to help navigate here to find what it is that you're looking for in styles. Let's take a look at pallets, and pallets work very similarly. They're grouped a little bit differently because the pallets do work a little differently than crates do. Just like with crates where we had to generate our own naming convention, we did the same thing with pallets, and that helps to provide control with standardized pallets. Now, the concept of pallets in Crate Pro is standardized pallets. So they're typically what you would may know as unit load pallets or standard pallets in some sort. If you're looking for a skid base, you would find skid bases actually under crates, depending on how heavy duty you want to make it. You'd find it in one of these, or in some cases you may make a crate and remove the cap and remove all the components of the cap just to leave a base alone. So here, let's say we're looking for a stringer pallet, two-way stringer pallet with double wing. We could click here. We could navigate through these as well, through stringer pallets and so on, but we could get there a little bit faster here. And here's stringer pallets with double wings. And you'll see some slight variations, mostly lead boards and board sizes. In this case, you've got some plywood and lumber on the base both. And then you've got some greater navigation features. So what we've seen so far is some basic navigation through the Crate Pro styles. We looked at, I think we did it from the mil spec, but you can go to any of these. And from here we can jump to the related Crate Pro style, see exactly the same style, and some text about it. And next we're going to look at how to manage these. So we're going to jump out of the diagrams file for a little bit and talk a second about setting up Crate Pro. Now again, Crate Pro's got about 250 different styles of crates built into it. It's very diverse. In actuality, with the options that it gives you, you've got thousands and thousands. I think I calculated one time well over 10,000 different options within those 250 different styles. But bottom line is, most companies don't make 250 different styles of crates. Most companies make about 10 or maybe 20 at the most. And there may be occasions when you have a need, some special quote, and you have a need for some different style. But generally the needs are going to be much more limited on an ongoing basis. What you may do is decide, as a matter of business practice, let's go back to the LPO, because this is really a great example. Now, your company may be what you'd call a spec crating company, which means you like to design boxes and crates exactly to military specification or very close to it, and have little exception to that. If that's the case, you may decide that you're going to create new designs using the LPO001 style, and you'd want something that looks like this. You may decide, rather than creating something that's really to spec, that you prefer creating your designs using load-bearing corners, such as this. So this may be your company policy. Or we'll look at one more. Instead of building your boxes with the cleats on the outside, you may do pretty much the same thing, only with your cleats on the inside. And that may be your company policy. Now, it's this kind of diversity that allows you to differentiate yourself from your competitor. So obviously you don't want to be forced into creating a design using a style of crate that isn't unique to your company and your own style of crating. So Crate Pro allows you to have all these variations. So to use that to your advantage, we use those three examples, the LPO001, the LPO013, and the LPI001, as three distinctive different styles of crates, of which you would probably only design one of them. So when you get Crate Pro, one of the first things that you're going to do is go in and exclude styles of crates. So let's say, for example, that this is reflective of your company policy, load-bearing corners, rather than interlocking corners and outside cleating. So you would go in when you set up Crate Pro and omit this style of crate from the list and this style of crate from the list that you or an employee can use and select from when designing a crate. So let's jump and look at how to do that real quick now. We're going to go down to the Setup file, and then we're going to go to the Miscellaneous tab and go to Styles. And here we can see a list of all of the styles of crates and pallets that Crate Pro will design. So here we're looking at crate styles, and we can view pallets separately. Here we're looking at pallet styles. Let's go back to crates. So what you're going to do in setting up Crate Pro is you're going to come to this screen, Miscellaneous Styles, in the Setup file, and select Print, and from there you're going to select Crates, and the best way to do it probably is 2 across. And what you're going to get now is the ability to print out a list, I believe it's 6 per page, of including all the diagrams of the Crate Pro styles. So the best way to do it is go ahead and print out this list, 6 per page, and go through it and identify which styles of crates you don't build. So ultimately you're going to be circling the ones that you do keep or crossing out the ones that you want to get rid of. Once you've done that, we're going to come back here, and if you notice the red checkboxes here on the right, when you start, those will be all checked. So what you'd want to do initially is say uncheck all. It's a little bit faster. And then from the diagrams that you printed, go and check the styles of crates that you do design. This will allow them to appear in the user selection list when creating a new design. Now, to show you that in action, let's go ahead and go to the design file, and we'll go ahead and create a new design from here. We're not going to associate it with the job. And we can see all of the styles that we've checked. There's not many of them, and we only did this as an example, so there's only LPOs. We didn't go very far down the list. We didn't bounce around. You'll see that there are no other styles in the list because those are all that are checked. Now, we didn't do anything with pallets, so all of the pallets are still on the list. And generally, I'd recommend not unchecking the pallets. Since Crate Pro really is made for a crating company, and maybe that does pallets, to have the full list available is probably a better choice. Let's go back and view the crate list again. Now, another thing that we can do is we can view diagrams from here. Just kick in this real quick. Or you could select View from any of these and see diagrams of all these styles. So this gives you some verification of what you're doing when you're creating a new design. Now, the last thing to show you here before we get back to the diagrams file is the Hide Styles feature. Now, when you get Crate Pro is set up to allow anybody access to the program. You can set it up in the setup file to require people to log into Crate Pro, where you can track what people do and give them a variety of permissions. Until you've done that, everybody has administrator access. So to be able to click on this button and get to the Hidden Styles list, you have to have administrator access, or you have to have not set up user logging. So if you didn't change anything where people have to log in, then any of your users can get in and do this. In which case, it's a helpful tool just to separate the list. Here we have our company policy. This is what we say, these are the styles that our company designs by default, so somebody doesn't make a mistake and grab a wrong style. But if there is an exception, and you're allowing all users access, or if you're the administrator and you want to get in here, you can click on Hide Styles, and you can select from any one of the creating styles on the fly. Likewise, you can go ahead from here and add one to your list, or remove one to your list, And you can also change the sorting order to sort them more appropriately for your company. Let's go back to View Crates, and we can see we have no LPO004 now. 3 to 5, we removed it, and we added a 032. Okay, so that's how you get the styles to your list and use the list. All right, we're going to go ahead and cancel here, and we'll go back to the diagrams file. Okay, now before we get back onto the diagrams themselves, and as long as we're on the idea of printing things, let's take a look at the print menu here in diagrams. What we can do is click on the printer icon here in the diagrams file, and first thing we'll get is a message asking us, do we want to print the current diagram that we're viewing or the menu. If we select current, that'll just give us this diagram along with the text on a fairly blank piece of paper. Let's go to the menu though. From the menu here, you can select, now we're in the crates printing option, you can select to print all of the crate styles if you want to, or you can print them by groups. So here, for example, there are 80 LPO styles we would print if we selected this button, or we could print all LP styles, or we could print all light duty styles, 116 total. There's 23 medium duty and 14 heavy duty. Same thing if we go to pallets, so we've got a division here. And then all and other gives us all of the other options to print. So you can see all of these two tabs cover the Crate Pro styles, and then we have Astm styles, mil-spec styles, rules, closure, etc. Now, printing the diagrams can be very helpful from a management perspective and from a training perspective both. First off, if you want to set policy within your company, what you may want to do is print diagrams of all of the crate styles that you do design and put them in a binder at the front desk. Depending on how you work things out, and we may go over this in a different video, you may allow a receptionist, for example, or somebody who's not an experienced designer to take in phone calls for rough estimates and generate a rough estimate over the phone, send that out directly to the customer before it's reviewed. In that case, having the various styles and some information to go with the styles would give that person some guidance on what to quote to help them be very accurate right up front. The other thing that a lot of people do with the diagrams is go through and print out some key diagrams and post them on the walls out in the production shop. So we're going to go through in a second and look at some diagrams that cover nailing patterns and stitching patterns and methods and things like that. So putting those up on the walls out in the shop will help with the newer employees, help them get trained, and provide some consistency in your production. Okay, let's get back to the diagrams. We've gone through the various styles. Let's take a look at rules. Now, rules is something that's unique to Crate Pro. If you remember from the earlier video, Crate Pro uses 3 components when creating a new design. One is a style, one is a material group, and third is a rule. Now, rules are explained in detail here. Again, we've got some general information. Of course, there's some categorization that helps you to understand it. Probably not now, but hopefully in about a minute you will. There's also some general cleating information. Since rules apply to intermediate cleats or support cleats as well as battens, we explain some of that here. We don't actually have a batten diagram, but we can see some standard intermediate vertical and horizontal cleats, diagonal cleats, and then a fairly complex cleating pattern for larger crates. Now, some of the rules are based on the size of the plywood panel, while other rules are based on the unsupported span of the panel. So, in the case of the unsupported span, you may have a rule that says, take a look at this unsupported span, and once it reaches a certain value, in the example 36 inches, put in 1 intermediate cleat. Now this cleat, the first one, would actually be in the middle of the panel, and then after doing that, then measure from that intermediate cleat to the edge again. Now, after we put in the first one, we're going to look at a second and separate value, in this case 24 inches. So the program looks and says, is it big enough? Yes, it's over 24 inches. So let's go ahead and put in another one. After it puts in the second one, then it'll look again, evenly spaced. It'll look again and say, is it still over 24 inches? In this case, no, it's not. So there wasn't a third vertical cleat applied. In this case, the rule that was applied could have been top to base first, or in which case it applied these cleats first and then these second. Now, in this case, the rule that could have been applied could have been top to base first, or this could be front to aft first, in which case these cleats are applied first and then these are applied second. Or the rule could have been divide greatest span first, in which case the program looks at both directions to determine which direction is greater and then divides the greatest span. There's a variety of different rules that work in different ways on different panels, so it's important to understand them. Crate Pro allows you to set up the rules the way that you want them to work the way your company works. Now, this start and end only applies to rules that use unsupported spans. As I mentioned, there's also rules that work on the size of the plywood. Let's assume that this is an inside framed panel. And quite often on a panel that's framed on the inside, you may have the plywood actually hanging outside of the cleating. They don't go to the edge. Now, in this case, our plywood would start here, and a rule that may have been applied would be on seam only. If the on seam only rule applied, that would mean our plywood started here, and let's say we're using a 4-foot sheet of plywood. It would go across 2 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet, and our seam would have been right here. So the program would have determined to put a cleat on the seam. This would be another 4 feet, there would be another seam, and then roughly another 4 feet. So if this were an example of the on seam only rule, this would be about a 12-foot wide crate panel. We're going to skip through some of these and get right to the rules. Let's take a look at the A tab. Now, different rules apply to different types of panels. A1 is front to aft only, and you can see an example here of what kind of panel it may apply to. A2 is similar, front to aft only. A3 then, now these are for plywood boxes or crates. A3 would apply to a lumber box or crate. Front to aft, then single diagonal. So you can see again an example of where that may apply on a box or crate. Okay, let's take a look at the F tab, rules that start with F. And here we can see examples of F1 on seam only. As we mentioned earlier, cleats would be placed on the seams. In the F2, mid-sheet and on seams. So here, where this is a 4-foot piece of plywood, you'd end up with cleats roughly every 2 feet or so. There are also other rules that are specialty kind of rules. In this case, we have K1, match skids. So the number of cleats applied will be based on the number of skids applied so that everything can match. Or another example where it'll match some top requirements. Okay, let's move on from rules and take a look at closure. Most people in the industry are familiar with the term setup and either KD or knockdown. So obviously, as you can see here, setup means a fully assembled crate or box. It's completely closed. And KD or knockdown would indicate an unassembled crate. This is a crate where all the panels have been built but nothing is put together. Now in actuality, there's a number of options in between. Let's take a look. This would be a cap type of closure condition. You can see this isn't the greatest style example of this. It would be more similar to a 26-195 or a medium duty crate, but you get the idea. A sleeve type, or you could have the end off, front off, top off, or combinations thereof. Now this is useful in two regards. One is the industry previously didn't have any method of defining these types of closure condition, and there's a need for it in some cases when it comes to fasteners, and I'll explain that now and how Crate Pro used that for fasteners. When you design a crate in Crate Pro, the program uses two different types of fasteners. Well, it uses more, but in this regard, there's two we'll talk about. One is called the assembly fastener, and the other one is called the closure fastener. So this being a great example, if you were to build this box, you'd probably use nails, 2.5 to 3.5 inch nails maybe, to assemble this box. So you'd run nails down here, you'd have nails across the bottom, nails here, all the way around. You wouldn't have anything securing the top, at least yet. In this case, top off, all the nails around these areas would be called the assembly fasteners. They're used to assemble the box. Now, the closure condition, or delivery condition as some people may call it, here is called top off. In this case, you may build a box for a customer and put it together as much as you can, but then supply the box to them empty so that they can pack it, and you may supply it with a bag of nails or some other alternate fasteners for them to close it. So with this closure condition, we're identifying that the crate is to be assembled to this point and then stop. So we're indicating to manufacturing that the product is going to be loaded through the top of the crate. Now, when the product is loaded, you could still use nails to close this, in which case the closure fasteners would also be nails. Or you could use some alternate fastener. You could use clamps or cam blocks or some other type of fastener to close it as well. So by using the closure conditions, you can now tell where those fasteners will be applied. Similarly with all of these diagrams. So that's closure condition. This again is an example of diagrams that may work well out on the floor, on the wall, so when somebody sees on cutting instructions that the closure condition is a TFO, they know how to put this together and what fasteners to use where. Saves time, keeps them from coming in the office asking questions. Okay, we're going to start skipping ahead a little bit in the video, and I think you're getting a good idea of how to navigate through the diagrams file and the benefit. Let's take a look at packing. Crate Pro, in addition to building the container for you, will also automate some of the internal packing, the design of the internal packing components. The program will do case lining. It'll do wrapping. It'll handle padding and assist in the automation of floater decks. These diagrams, in this case, are good for two purposes. One is when you select one of these features in Crate Pro, you can identify what the feature is going to do, what the result is going to be, or at least what it's going to be close to before you change it. And two, you may use these diagrams to put out on the wall for your production shop to show new employees what a floater deck looks like. So it's a great training tool for the employees as well as a tool to help you identify what Crate Pro will do. Take a look at dimensions, and we can see how Crate Pro measures a crate. Although most commercial crate manufacturers measure crates in the same manner, there are some slight inconsistencies in how they're done. Additionally, Crate Pro will handle measurements of crates in two different ways when you're creating a design. You may create a design based on the inside dimensions of the container, as well as creating a design based on the content dimensions. So you just get some idea of how things are measured, and the diagram tell how tolerances work. Let's take a look at how to. In here, we have brief explanation of the various components of a crate. As well as some educational information on how to do some of the work in a crate. So that covers the basics of the diagrams file. Next video of this training set will cover the users file and the benefits it provides. Please note that if you don't intend to provide different employees with unique logins and passwords, then you don't need to do anything with the user file. Unless changed to require a login and password, Crate Pro will simply run when launched, and everyone will have administrator type access. The user features available in the user file are available regardless if you use Crate Pro as a single or multi-user program. We'll see you there.